My name is Jamie. It was a regular afternoon, almost 9 years after I left that house. My phone rang, showing an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello," I said. The voice on the other end was hesitant, older, and all too familiar. Is this my daughter? My heart didn't skip a beat or soften. It just steadied. I knew they weren't calling for me. They were calling for the grandson they believed I'd been raising all these years. When we finally met, they were nervous, bombarding me with questions about their so-called grandson, what he liked, how old he was, if they could see him. I listened quietly and then calmly said, "There is no grandson." Silence filled the air. I went on to explain the loss, the hospital, and the years of their silence. Their faces changed, not from shock but realization. Let me rewind. I was 16 in 10th grade, living in a family where reputation was everything. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were pillars of the community. They were strict, believing in discipline and order. Every move we made reflected on the family name. One day, I took a pregnancy test. The paper trembled in my hands. Not because of the number, but what it meant. Positive. 2 lines that split my life in two. I sat on my bed for nearly 20 minutes, staring at the test, wishing it would change. But reality doesn't negotiate. I knew the conversation with my parents was coming. That evening after dinner, I asked if we could talk. My mother, Mrs. Thompson, sensed the seriousness right away. My father, Mr. Thompson, muted the TV. "What happened?" he asked. I placed the test on the table. There was silence, not confusion. Recognition dawned on their faces. My mother stared at the result, her expression hardening. Shock, disbelief, and then a coldness took over. My father didn't even touch the paper. "Is this a joke?" he asked. "No," I said, the words sounding smaller than I expected. The atmosphere in the room changed. It got sharper. "How could you do this?" my mother whispered. It wasn't a question about what happened or if I was okay. It was just blame. I tried to explain that I didn't plan this, but they weren't interested. My father stood up slowly, like he did when a conversation was over. "You've embarrassed this family," he said, the words hitting me harder than a shout. I quietly said, "I'm still your daughter." But instead of softening, he hardened. "No," he replied. "Not if you choose this." It was as if I had a choice in this reality. My mother folded her arms tightly. "You're too young to understand what this will cost us," she said, emphasizing us, and not me or the baby. I felt something inside me break. I said, "I need support," my voice calm despite my shaking hands. My father pointed to the hallway. "You need consequences." Then came the sentence that changed my life. "If you walk forward with this mistake, you walk forward without this family." Silence filled the room. I waited a few seconds, hoping for some negotiation. But there was none. I knew what I couldn't do, so I made the only decision I could live with. "I'm not ending this," I said softly. My mother turned away, and my father didn't hesitate. "Pack your things," he said. There was no yelling, just a cold removal. In 40 minutes, my life was reduced to a backpack and a small suitcase, filled with clothes, school books, and a few personal items. When I reached the front door, I stopped. Part of me still hoped they'd change their minds. But they didn't. The door opened, and the cold night air replaced the warmth of a home that was no longer mine. "Do not come back," my father said. I nodded, not in agreement, but in understanding. I stepped outside, 16, pregnant, and alone. I didn't cry then. Shock protected me. I walked down the street with no destination, just moving forward. Behind me, the porch light went off, and that hurt more than anything. It meant they were done with me. The first few months were about survival. I stayed with a school friend, Lily, for 2 weeks until her parents had to ask me to leave. Then a local women's support center helped me find temporary housing and continue my schooling. I studied harder than ever, not to prove anyone wrong, but to keep my future from falling apart. However, the pregnancy was tough. Stress, exhaustion, and instability took their toll. In my 5th month, a sudden complication led to a hospital visit. The doctor spoke gently, but the message was clear: the baby didn't survive. I nodded and even thanked her as if politeness could hold me together. That night, alone in the hospital room, I realized I was grieving not just the child, but the version of myself that thought pain would bring my family back together. My parents never called during the pregnancy or after the loss. I moved forward, this time building a life. I finished school through evening classes while working part-time at an accounting office. Numbers were predictable, unlike my personal life. One opportunity led to another, and I found stability. By 24, I had my own apartment, and by 26, I was managing a small financial team. Looking back, I once thought being alone was the end of my story, but it became the beginning of my strength. Loss taught me resilience, and silence taught me clarity. Real family is about who stays when life is at its hardest. My parents lost a daughter long before they thought they lost a grandson.